Have you ever stopped to think about how incredibly tough your phone screen is? Or like how that non-stick pan just works so well?
Or even the parts in new cars, those advanced materials, they really perform.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something quietly underpinning a lot of that modern tech, fluorine polymers.
Right. These aren't your everyday plastics. We're talking materials engineered for, well, extreme conditions.
Yeah.
Things like PTFE, maybe better known as Teflon to some folks.
Yeah, Teflon's the famous one. They've got amazing chemical resistance. They handle heat incredibly well, and they're just plain durable.
Absolutely. They step in where other plastics just can't cut it. You find them in automotive, electronics, aerospace, even really demanding chemical processing.
So our mission today really is to dig into the latest market intelligence on these polymers. We want to pull out the key insights about their growth, where it's happening, those regional dynamics.
Looking at the what's and the where.
Exactly, the what and the where of this, frankly, robust market. And crucially, what all this growth might mean for you, whether you're involved in manufacturing or innovation, or maybe you're just curious about the stuff shaping our future.
So let's set the stage globally first.
Good idea. Globally, back in 2021, the market was valued at just over $7.1 billion.
Okay.
Projections show it jumping to nearly $8.8 billion by 2025.
Wow, quite a leap.
And then really taking off, expected to hit an impressive $13.5 billion roughly by 2033.
13.5 billion. That highlights a pretty strong compound annual growth rate, the CAGR. What's the global figure?
It's about 5.4% globally. And that's not just a dry number, right? It points to really steady, deep adoption across industries. It shows this foundational reliance that just isn't slowing down.
A solid growth trajectory.
Definitely. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's break it down by region. See where this growth is truly surging and maybe get into the why.
Yeah, that's key because what's fascinating is how these different regional pictures add up to the global one. You see this mix, right? Mature markets still pushing forward, and then these burgeoning hotbeds of new demand.
It really speaks to how versatile these materials are.
It does.
Okay, so let's start with North America, often seen as, a leading mature market. What are the numbers telling us there? What's the story?
Well, North America, it is mature, like you said, but it still shows surprisingly robust growth. It brought in just over $2 billion back in 2021.
Okay.
And we expect that to climb quite steadily. The projection is nearly $3.6 billion by 2033. That works out to an average annual growth rate of about just under 5%, almost 4.97%.
Almost 5%. That's pretty solid for a mature market.
It is. And it's not just about the overall size. It reflects this really resilient demand, probably driven by constant innovation in sectors like, say, aerospace, defense,
Yeah.
and the big shift towards EVs, electric vehicles.
Right, they need lightweight, high-performance stuff.
Exactly. These polymers fit the bill perfectly.
So that consistent growth, does it suggest it's spread pretty evenly, or are there specific sectors or countries really driving that resilience within North America?
It's, well, a bit of both, but there are clear leaders. The United States, no surprise, is the dominant player. It accounts for the biggest slice of that market, projected to grow to almost $2.9 billion itself by 2033. But interestingly, Canada actually shows a slightly higher CAGR, about 5.4%.
Okay.
Growing from around $267 million to nearly $500 million over that same period.
Wow.
And Mexico, while smaller, it's also showing strong expansion. It's projected to more than double its market, hitting over $235 million by 2033. That kind of signals increasing industrialization, more manufacturing capability happening south of the border.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture for North America, consistent with some interesting internal dynamics. Now let's go across the Atlantic to Europe, just often seen as, an industrial powerhouse, big on green tech. What's the fluorine polymer story looking like there?
Europe's definitely seeing healthy expansion, very much in line with its industrial strengths. The region started at about $1.56 billion in revenue in 2021.
Right.
And it's projected to reach nearly $2.82 billion by 2033. That's an average growth of about 5.2% annually.
So similar growth rate to North America.
Very similar.
Yeah.
And this sustained growth, it's likely getting a boost from, strict environmental regulations. That drives demand for highly durable, low-maintenance materials. Think about renewable energy infrastructure.
Like wind turbines, maybe?
Exactly. Wind turbine components, efficient insulation, fluorine polymers are key for things like that.
Makes sense. So what's driving that growth within Europe? Any specific countries standing out or maybe some surprising players emerging?
Well, Germany, being Europe's industrial heartland, unsurprisingly shows the strongest growth. It's projected to basically double its market to over $500 million by 2033.
Wow.
That's an impressive 5.6% annual growth. And it's not just market size, it feels like a strategic move towards, high-value manufacturing. The UK also shows robust growth, getting up over $330 million. Russia, growing a bit slower, maybe around 4.8%, still represents a significant chunk, projected over $340 million by 2033.
Okay.
France and Spain are also significant players, growing around 4.6% and 5% respectively. Italy a bit slower, around 4.1%. But what's particularly fascinating, I think, is the rest of Europe category.
Oh, like we saw in North America, Canada and Mexico maybe punching above their weight percentage-wise.
Exactly. This diverse group of other European countries lumped together shows the fastest regional growth rate, over 6% annually.
6%.
It suggests really dynamic, maybe niche market entries, rapid adoption across smaller economies that are perhaps industrializing quickly or finding specializations. They're projected to hit almost $585 million by 2033.
That is a dynamic picture for Europe. You've got the established giants and the surprising surges elsewhere. Okay, so let's talk about the big one. What does all this mean for the undisputed global powerhouse that is APAC, Asia-Pacific?
APAC. Yeah, it truly dominates the global growth trends. It's fueled by this incredible combination of massive manufacturing scale and just relentless innovation.
The numbers must be big.
They are, starting from roughly $2.6 billion in 2021.
Already the biggest region then.
By far. And APAC is forecasted to almost double that market size, hitting over $5.2 billion by 2033.
Wow.
That reflects a really strong average growth rate, over 6% annually for the whole region.
Higher than North America and Europe?
Definitely. This region is just the epicenter for global electronics manufacturing, automotive production, and a rapidly expanding chemical industry, all huge drivers for these high-performance polymers.
That growth is just incredible. So drilling down within APAC, which countries are really pushing this surge? And are there unique factors at play there compared to elsewhere?
Well, China is the clear frontrunner. No surprises there. It's surging from just over $1 billion in 2021 to over $2 billion by 2033. That's a CIGR of about 6.4%, a true manufacturing juggernaut. But here's where it gets even more.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
A true manufacturing juggernaut. But here's where it gets even more interesting, I think. India. It's close behind in terms of, well, not market size yet, but growth rate. It actually shows the highest annual growth rate in all of APAC.
Higher than China?
Yes, over 6.5%, growing from around $478 million to over $1 billion by 2033.
Doubling and then some.
Exactly. It signals not just industrialization, but this explosion in consumer demand, massive infrastructure development.
Okay. What about other established players like Japan?
Japan, it's a more mature market within APAC, but it still maintains a steady pace, growing around 5.5% annually, reaching over $500 million. South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, they're all growing healthily too, sort of in the 4.7% to 5.1% range.
And Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia as a bloc shows impressive gains too, from about $396 million to over $750 million, growing at nearly 5.3% CAGR.
It's a strong growth across the board, but India's rate is exceptional.
It is. But hold on, remember the rest of Europe's story? We see something even more dramatic in APAC, the rest of APAC's segment.
Let me guess. Highest growth rate again?
By a significant margin. This collection of countries shows the highest AGR of all subregions we've discussed anywhere in the world, almost 7.9% annually.
Nearly 8%. That's astonishing.
It is. Growing from a smaller base, sure, just $66 million in 2021, but projected to hit over $175 million by 2033. This isn't just high growth, it signals potentially explosive adoption, maybe rapid industrialization in new areas or new market entries outpacing even giants like China and India on a percentage basis.
Wow. Rest of APAC really is the one to watch then.
Yeah.
That's not just growth, like you said, it's a profound market shift happening. Okay, let's move on. South America, a continent often associated with, emerging economies. How's its steady climb in fluorine polymer adoption looking?
Yeah, the South American market is definitely climbing steadily. It's projected to grow from around $430 million in 2021 to nearly $1 billion by 2033. That shows a strong average growth rate, too, about 5.6% annually.
So again, outpacing North America and Europe slightly in terms of growth rate.
That's right. And this growth, it seems largely underpinned by, well, increasing industrialization, infrastructure development, and growing demand in sectors like automotive and chemical processing across the continent.
Are there specific drivers or leading countries in South America we should focus on, or is it more of a uniform expansion across the board?
Brazil really leads the region. It's set to grow from just under $150 million to over $345 million by 2033. That's an annual growth rate of about 5.7%.
Pretty much driving the regional average then.
It is, but countries like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, they're all contributing significantly as well. Their revenues are generally expected to double over this 12-year period, showing healthy growth rates, somewhere between 4.9% and 5.7%.
And do we see that RESA phenomenon again?
We do, yes. The rest of South America category exhibits the highest regional growth rate there, too, at almost 5.8% annually.
Interesting. It seems to be a consistent pattern.
It does suggest broader economic development, growth happening beyond just the traditional heavyweights in each region, projected to grow from about $150 million to $350 million.
Okay, fascinating. Finally, let's turn our attention to the Middle East and Africa. We were expecting maybe more moderate growth here compared to, say, APAC. But are there specific areas of interest or hotspots that stand out?
Indeed, the growth is more moderate overall, but there are definitely key areas. Let's take the Middle East first. That segment is set to grow from just over $312 million in 2021 to about $520 million by 2033.
Okay, what's the growth rate there?
The CAGR is around 3.8%, lower than other regions we've discussed.
Right.
Within the Middle East, countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UAE make up the bulk of the market. Demand seems driven by large-scale infrastructure projects and continued investment in their petrochemical sectors.
Okay. And Africa?
Africa's market is expanding from roughly $180 million to over $312 million by 2033. That's supported by a slightly higher average growth rate than the Middle East, about 4.3% annually.
Still solid growth. Any particular country leading the way in Africa?
Nigeria stands out. It's the top market in Africa, showing a healthy 4.5% annual growth. It's expected to reach over $80 million by 2033. That likely reflects its growing manufacturing base and significant urbanization trends.
Okay, right. Let's try and tie all of this together now. That was quite a journey through the global fluorine polymer market. It's really fascinating to see how one class of materials can have such different stories playing out across continents.
Absolutely. If you connect it all back to the bigger picture, it's just crystal clear that the fluorine polymer market is on this really robust foundational growth path everywhere.
Yeah.
And this continued expansion, it doesn't just suggest stable demand, it points towards deeper integration into, next generation technologies, which I think raises a really important question for all of us. What does this strong, diverse growth actually mean for innovation in all the industries that use these polymers? And how might this increasing adoption of high-performance materials really reshape manufacturing landscapes globally over the next decade or so?
That's a great point. So to quickly summarize the key takeaways, we're seeing market growth heavily driven by industrial upgrades and that booming electronics sector in Asia-Pacific.
Right, especially China and India, but also that explosive rest of APAC growth.
Then you have advanced high-value applications pushing things forward in Europe, alongside steady growth in North America.
And emerging demand linked to industrialization and infrastructure really lifting South America and Africa.
And the headline number again. The global fluorine polymer industry expected to hit that incredible $13.5 billion mark by 2033, with these significant transformative shifts happening within each region's market dynamics.
And just to mention, all the specific figures and the detailed insights we've discussed today, they're drawn from comprehensive market intelligence provided by Cognitive Market Research.
Excellent. So considering this incredible versatility and growth we've mapped out for fluorine polymers, materials performing in the toughest conditions, from outer space to the operating room, here's a final thought for you listening. What new, maybe completely unexpected everyday items or truly groundbreaking technologies do you think might heavily rely on these materials by the end of the next decade? What kind of world does this quiet but incredibly robust growth truly enable?
Welcome to the deep dive. So glad you're with us. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the powerful, high-performance world of the fluorine polymer market. Our mission, like always, is to pull out the most important stuff from a big market report. This one's from Cognitive Market Research. Think of it as your shortcut, really, to understanding this key bit of the chemical industry. We'll give you the surprising facts, the context you need without, drowning you in data. We're aiming to get a handle on its growth, what's driving it, where things are shifting geographically, and what the future looks like.
And what immediately jumps out, from the report is just the sheer momentum this market already has. Globally, the fluorine polymer market was valued at over $7 billion back in 2021. That's $760.78 million to be precise. And it's projected to climb to nearly $9,846 million by 2025. Then it really takes off, soaring to a pretty remarkable $13.5 billion.
Yeah.
That's $13,473.2 million by 2033. So overall, that's a healthy growth rate, a CAGR of 5.4% year over year. And this kind of, strong expansion isn't just random. It's fundamentally powered by these high-performance industries that absolutely rely on these polymers. Why? Because they're exceptional chemical resistance and thermal stability. They're really essential materials in tough applications.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. This growth, it isn't spread evenly, is it? If we kind of zoom in on the map, the geographical picture, it becomes super clear who the major players are. Asia Pacific, APAC, for instance. Wow, it's a true powerhouse. Valued at around $2.6 billion, $230.57 million in 2021. And it's expected to hit $3.26 billion by 2025 and then reach over $5.2 billion, $1,514.14 million by 2033. That's an impressive growth rate. What is it? 6.029% CAGR. And drilling down further, India is actually leading the charge with the highest CAGR, 6.515%. It's going from about $478 million in 2021 to over $1 billion by 2033. And China, which is already the biggest market there, is growing super fast too, 6.433%, projected to more than double by 2033. Plus, you've got Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, lots of demand from electronics, semiconductors, and increasingly green tech.
Yeah, you're right. APAC is definitely a huge engine. But it's important to see how the other regions fit into the global picture too. North America, for example, is still a really pivotal market. Estimated at just over $2 billion, $2,551.42 million. In 2021, it's projected to rise to about $2.46 billion by 2025, and then reach over $3.6 billion, $626.99 million by 2033. That's growing at roughly 4.968% annually. And the U.S. is the dominant player there, no surprise. Going from $1.65 billion in 2021 to almost $2.9 billion by 2033, growing at 4.886%. Though interestingly, Canada is showing a slightly faster growth rate, 5.359% CAGR, and Mexico's strong too at 5.171%. Okay, then moving across to Europe, that market's also set for strong growth. It was $1.56 billion in 2021, growing to over $2.8 billion to over $523 million in that period. And of course, the UK, France, Italy, Spain, Russia, they're all contributing, mostly in the form.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
And of course, the UK, France, Italy, Spain, Russia, they're all contributing, mostly in the 4% to 5.5% growth range. But what's quite interesting is the rest of Europe category. Think Eastern Europe, smaller economies.
That segment actually shows the highest regional pace, over 6%, 6.067%. So demand seems to be picking up broadly. Looking further south in South America, it's definitely on a growth path. Market was about $430 million in 2021, heading towards nearly $1 billion, $983.546 million by 2033, growing at 5.582% CAGR overall. And Brazil and Colombia are the fastest growing within the region, around 5.7% each. Middle East, well, it's growing, but a bit more modestly, around 3.8% CAGR, expected to go from $312 million in 2021 to $520 million by 2033, probably linked to, ongoing economic diversification efforts being a bit challenging. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt are the main players, Turkey and Qatar showing relatively slower growth, and finally Africa, moving steadily, growing from about $180 million in 2021 to over $312 million by 2033, with a 4.316% CAGR. Nigeria showing the highest growth on the continent of 4.521%.
Okay, so we've got those foundational numbers, the regional picture. It's clear there's growth everywhere, just at different speeds. So what's really driving all this? Why are fluorine polymers so vital? The report really bangs the drum on one key factor, their exceptional chemical resistance and thermal stability. But what does that actually mean in practice?
It means they get chosen when literally nothing else can do the job. Simple as that. These aren't just, good materials. They're often indispensable. That unique combo lets them stand up to the absolute harshest conditions. Super corrosive chemicals, extreme heat, you name it. Think about the inside of a chemical processing plant, maybe high-performance parts in aerospace, or even just the seals and gaskets in your car's engine, places where failure is just, it's not an option. They're often the last line of defense.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. They work where other stuff would just, poof, fall apart instantly. But okay, beyond those extreme industrial uses, what other sectors are really pushing this demand?
Right, but building on that point, another massive driver is the skyrocketing demand from electronics and semiconductors. I mean, think about it. Our devices are getting smaller, way more complex, more powerful all the time. So the materials inside them, they have to meet incredibly strict needs. Fluoropolymers bring things like low dielectric properties, which is critical for signal integrity, extreme purity, excellent insulation. These are non-negotiables. You find them in chip manufacturing, in the materials used in clean rooms, coatings on wires. They're absolutely vital for, modern microelectronics and rolling out things like 5G. And it doesn't stop there either. The healthcare sector is also really ramping up its use of fluorine polymers. There are specific properties, especially biocompatibility, meaning they don't react badly with the body. And the fact they can handle sterilization processes easily makes them ideal. So we're talking about a huge range of medical applications, things like catheters, all sorts of tubing, complex implants, surgical tools. And with global healthcare spending going up, populations aging, and this renewed focus on hygiene, especially post-pandemic, the demand in healthcare is just accelerating like crazy.
Wow, it really is impressive. Such versatile materials, such strong growth. It kind of sounds too good to be true sometimes, doesn't it? But like you said, high-performance solutions usually come with challenges. Every superhero has their kryptonite, right? So where do these high flyers run into trouble? What are the hurdles?
That's a really excellent question. And it brings us to, well, some crucial points. The first major hurdle is definitely their high cost. No getting around that. The raw materials themselves aren't cheap, and the manufacturing processes needed are complex, often energy intensive. So yeah, this makes fluoropolymers significantly pricier than your average plastic. But, and this is the key insight I think, for those applications where safety, reliability, extreme performance are absolutely paramount, think like a medical implant or a component on a spacecraft, the initial cost often takes a back seat. The cost of failure is just too high, right? Cost is one thing. Then you got the big one. The environmental and health concerns, specifically around certain types of PFAS, the ones often called forever chemicals. This is a major headache for the industry. These concerns are leading to much tighter regulations all over the world. You see it under REACH in Europe, EPA norms in the US. And this is forcing the industry to innovate, basically, to find solutions. And finally, there's the issue of recycling and disposal. I mean, the very stability that makes them so incredibly useful. Well, that also makes them incredibly hard to break down safely, or even to incinerate without releasing potentially harmful stuff. It's a bit like, I don't know, trying to recycle a diamond. It's super durable, which is great when you're using it, but a real nightmare when you're done with it.
Okay, right. So we've looked at the scale, the drivers, and yeah, those are pretty significant hurdles, cost, PFAS, disposal. But industries adapt, right? So where is this one innovating to stay ahead? What's actually next for fluorine polymers?
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is how the industry is actively tackling these challenges and at the same time pushing into completely new areas. One of the biggest trends, definitely, is the intense development of eco-friendly and PFAS-free alternatives, or at least lower concern PFAS. Companies are pouring money into research. Things like bio-based fluoropolymers, variants with shorter chemical chains that might break down easier, and also greener ways to actually make them. It's a really clear signal, the industry gets it. Sustainability isn't just nice to have anymore, it's absolutely foundational for their future. Beyond just dealing with the downsides, though, we're also seeing expanded roles in next-generation sectors. Big time. Fluorine polymers are becoming critical in areas like, 5G infrastructure, electric vehicles, EVs, and advanced aerospace applications. Why? Because their unique properties are exactly what's needed. They're lightweight, they can handle incredible heat, and they have low signal loss, which is crucial for communications. So you find them in EV battery components, high-performance fuel lines, complex radar systems, even parts for satellites. And one more trend that's worth mentioning is the increased use of fluoropolymer films and coatings. We're moving way beyond just non-stick pans here, though that's still a big market. Think about coatings for solar panels to make them last longer, special architectural membranes for buildings, advanced food packaging for better shelf life, even pharmaceutical applications. In all these areas, properties like UV, resistance, flexibility, and being a really good barrier, they're absolutely critical.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you, the listener, taking this knowledge away? As we finish this deep dive, it feels pretty clear that the fluorine polymer market is at this really fascinating crossroads, doesn't it? It's this constant dance between incredible scientific innovation and evolving regulations, between pushing performance boundaries and grappling with sustainability. And its uses across so many fast-growing industries that definitely promises more robust expansion ahead.
Yeah, and if we connect this back to that bigger picture, it's really clear that the sector's continued strong growth hinges heavily on its ability to navigate those hurdles we talked about, especially the environmental ones and the cost barriers, which I think raises a pretty important question for all of us to mull over, really. As we keep pushing the limits of what high-performance materials can do, how can industry make sure that the forever chemicals of today don't become the forever problems of tomorrow?
That is a truly thought-provoking question. It really underscores the complexity of progress, doesn't it? Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fluorine polymer market. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai